good enough is never good enough, right? Like there's good and there's not good, right? There's no such thing of it's good enough. Same whether it's employees, whether it's the food. Good enough is just not a concept. Like, I don't even know what it means. Like good enough for what? You're either good or you're not. And the goal here is you got to be good.
Welcome back. We are doing a 10-part series with Nelson to talk about the successful restaurant industry, how to build your company up. And we had our first video talking about the importance of passion. Today, we're talking about the importance of culture. So Nelson, what do you have for us? Why is culture so important?
At least in the restaurant business, perhaps in any business, you kind of have to know who and what you are, starting with how do you envision yourself? What are you going to look like? What are people going to feel when they walk in? What do you want them to take out of it, your customers? The idea that you have no identity, you don't know what your customer looks like, you don't know where they're coming from, who they are, what their demographic is, that wouldn't work. So any culture can work, but I define culture as knowing who and what you are and who and what your audience expects you to be. We had a very specific target when we built Hunt and Fish Club, and I would think any restaurant should, at least of this type. And I guess if you're a hot dog stand on the side of a road, your demographic is anybody driving it on a long ride and is hungry, right? But here it's not the case. Whether you're a pizza salon or a diner or an upscale steak and seafood house, you kind of have to know who you are, what image you want to portray, and sort of be loyal to that. Build it and they will come is a movie. It's not reality. Right. Build it and stare at it is the reality if you don't know who your audience is and how to get them. And so that's when you define culture, it's part of the total experience and what you want that experience to be.
So what would you define that as for here? So Hunt and Fish Club, what is the culture that you have created for your guests?
We want this to have felt like, as I mentioned in the prior lesson, a little bit of a throwback, a little bit of an upscale that once upon a time New York felt like this. We want this to be a nicer night out for people, such as an anniversary or a birthday, not the place where you go to hang out every day for lunch, and that's fine if it did, but if you do it because you want that upscale sort of experience, that's the easy part. The hard part of saying we want it to be an upscale experience is to not feel uncomfortable or rigid. So that was the challenge, the upscale and comfortable simultaneously. Like the name Hunt and Fish Club, when people asked us about club, they thought we were saying it like it was a membership club. And that wasn't what it was about. The word club was used in the context of clubhouse. We want people to come here and feel like that they're likely to already see somebody they know and to come and hang out. Even if they're alone, just show up at the bar. Chances are you'll know people. So we wanted more of a clubhouse feel than exclusive club. That was absolutely not the intent. And in the beginning, there was some confused messaging in that, and not anymore, but right at the beginning there was. And we particularly targeted, in our case, the post 9/11 finance crowd moving into Midtown Manhattan. Post 9/11, a lot of the Wall Street community moved into Midtown. And there were restaurants in Lower Manhattan that were traditionally sort of hangout places for that community. And we tried to say, what's the Midtown version of that? And there were restaurants the community went to, so there's a difference between a place you go to and a go-to restaurant. So the places in Midtown where they went to were because of convenience, it was on their block, it was around the corner or whatever, but there were no restaurants that were people knew as this is the place where our industry goes, whether it was finance or hedge funds, media, those kind of things. So we're saying, like, what can we build to get targeting that community? That was our demographic. Much different than a barbecue restaurant I'm involved with. 100% different. Right. But the concept is the same of who's your audience, how do you reach them? How do you appeal to them? And how do you make them want to come back? The underlying model is the same. Who the people are may be different, and sometimes they're the same. During the week, it's one, and on the weekends, it's the other. But the culture is more identifying and targeting your audience. And if you're successful, you pull from places that just want to share that experience, even if it's not your target audience. So we got very lucky in that the look and feel created that. Through personal relationships and other things, we were able to initially, because it sounds good in theory.
Right.
We want this to be the go-to place for finance or media people. That sounds great.
Right.
How do you make it happen?
Exactly.
Right. And I remembered a partner of mine, a certain Mr. Scaramucci, you might know the name.
Yeah.
When I asked him that, because he's brilliant in his own way, and he said, Gray's Papaya. I don't know if you know Gray's Papaya. It's a very famous hot dog place in Manhattan, been there forever. And everyone says they have the best hot dogs in New York. And he goes, how did that happen? I go, I don't know. He goes, they put a sign on their wall 40 years ago, best hot dogs in New York. The sign's still up.
Okay.
So he said, the way we're going to become that is we're going to tell everybody that we are. And they'll believe us. Mm-hmm. And we did, and they did, and that's what we've become. I don't know that that's a lesson that always works, but that's really how we did it. We just started telling people. Before we signed our lease, there was some media telling the world that we were building this place for this community, and it was already being discussed.
Right. Does that then also help influence even you walking in, your team walking in, hiring, your chef and the members? Like this is what we're creating.
Right. It's both. This is what they expect. We have to deliver it.
Right.
Right. So we're saying this is what we're going to be. This is the audience we want. And once we get the audience we want, we have to give what they expected. So each feeds the other. And again, that ties into culture. I have many staff meetings about, we get a handful of recognizable faces and names that come through here, so everybody knows them, the staff, the host, everybody knows. Mm-hmm. But we teach them, like, hey, if you're coming into this restaurant, everybody is sort of a somebody, and you don't know who you're serving, but even more importantly than who they may be, it's they're coming here expecting a certain experience.
Right.
Whether it's somebody who does this every day and they work around the corner for one of the networks, or if it's somebody who saves up for an entire year to go out with their spouse for their anniversary dinner, and it's a really big deal to them. And in a lot of ways, I care more about them because like they have choices and they only get to do it once, and you don't want to mess it up for them. And so culturally, you have to treat every person as a VIP. Mm-hmm. And because that's what they expect, and they go home feeling like they got what they were hoping to get out of it, and you just can't take it for granted like that. There's not every guest is the same. Some are more recognizable, some are here more often, but culturally, we want people to have this experience, and it's a tightrope between formality and comfort, and it's not always so easy, but that's the goal, and so far we've been okay at it.
Great. How much of your business do you think is word of mouth and referrals of people who have come here, experienced the culture, and that's what they end up talking about?
100.
100.
Yeah. Nobody comes here because they think I'm such a nice guy.
Right.
Maybe the first time they come, but certainly nobody comes back because of that.
And so what do you think the words are that they're using? So 100% of your business referral based. They had a great experience here. What is that celebrity or just that person who wants a night out?
I think it's different for everybody. I think the words they say is, you got to go to Hunt and Fish. They're the coolest place.
Okay.
I think it's we've developed a name that has a certain perception of very good quality food, very good quality experience, and a really neat, fun place to go. Like it's a formal place where you go out laughing. That's sort of the goal. And I think it's a little different for everybody. The crowds are different. Midweek is different than weekend. Lunch is different than dinner. So I think there's no one theme that appeals to it, but I think the overall is like, you got to go to Hunt and Fish Club. One of the more interesting things, we were once named in a rap song.
Okay.
And you probably could tell I'm not a real big rap guy. There was an artist named Little Uzi Vert who
Okay.
talked about doing something really cool and taking a girlfriend or whatever to the Hunt and Fish Club. In
Okay.
and of itself, that's cool.
Yeah.
Part B of the story is he's never actually been here.
Okay. He just knows. It just
He
has
just
the brand.
knows, and it has
Yeah.
the branding
Yeah. It's
gave
great.
it that. Yeah, I thought that was pretty fascinating, actually.
If you had to pick 3 to 5 adjectives that would make you the most proud if you heard people talking about your restaurant, what would you say?
First, I have to remember what an adjective is. I haven't been in school in a while. I'll tell you the thoughts. Number one is the first thing that people talk about is when you walk in, it's got a very impressive look to it. You came in today and you said, wow, this place is gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm very proud of, if I showed you the renderings when this place was just an idea, the artist renderings and what it looks like, they're identical. So we built exactly what we wanted. Number two is that when they were here, they were made to feel comfortable immediately. Number three is that they got everything out of the experience that they had hoped. Number four is that they tell their friends about it. And number five is that their friends then show up. Like, for example, the other day we had a holiday party. And there were some things that happened during the party that internally we knew weren't what was supposed to have happened. The timing was a little off. Not only did the guests not know it, the company, the host, it was a corporate event, the host went into our office afterwards and said he wanted to pick his night for next year.
Wow.
Notwithstanding, like, I'm sitting there obsessing about the few things that weren't exactly the way I had planned.
Right.
But that's us knowing the way this was supposed to play out. Nobody micromanages it as a guest the way you do as
Sure.
the owner or the management. Like, what does the guest know? The food wasn't good, or my guest had to wait a half an hour to refill their drink. That they see, and that's a problem. The little things, I see it, and the staff hopefully sees it. But the guests don't always. It's more about they have a global experience. Either I had a really good time or I didn't.
Right.
Right? They don't worry, was that French fry a little burnt? Right? It's just not a lot. Like, I care, but they don't. So you want them to have a global experience that's either positive. You want it to be positive. It's either going to be positive, neutral, and negative. Neutral and negative is not acceptable. Good enough is never good enough. Right? Like, there's good and there's not good, right? There's no such thing of it's good enough. Same, whether it's employees, whether it's the food, good enough is just not a concept. Like, I don't even know what it means. Like, good enough for what? Like, you're either good or you're not. And the goal here is you got to be good. You got to be really good. And so culturally, you want the staff to know, because the staff, the way they feel, they're the ones who put the culture onto the guests. The guests will have their experience based on your staff and how they present everything else. The room is already built. That doesn't change. With some nights it's laid out differently depending on what's going on, but the basics, it is what it is. The staff kind of create the feelings within the room that the guests then feed off of. And that doesn't happen randomly or by accident. You point it out, you have classes, you show, this is what we're trying to do here. And either they get it or they don't. And hopefully they do. And we have a staff that is perhaps on the younger side and a little less formal, but that's not an accident. If I wanted, I could go hire people who've been serving formal steakhouses in the last 40 years and are very rigid and very formal, and I'm not criticizing, and that's fine. It's just not what we wanted here. We wanted some of that feeling, but in a more casual, friendly way. And it's in our case, it's walking a tightrope, but it's walking a tightrope that we've sort of mastered, and we're pretty good at it. And there's some mess ups. Obviously, it's not buying a comic book at a candy store where they're all the same. Every night is different, and there's just a lot of moving parts. But overall, there's an experience that we're trying to create. So getting back to the original concept of culture, all of this is a culture, and every staff member knows what the culture is supposed to be. You feel it in the room. You feel a vibrancy, a vibe. Come for dinner tonight. I hope you feel it. Rather than quiet people whispering in their own little universe, you
Right.
feel a certain energy of people are at their own tables, but they're in this room together, and that's a great feeling. And hopefully we get it every night.
Cool. So this is a 10-part series with Nelson from the Hunt and Fish Club. Up next is talking about the importance of branding and marketing. Go click the link right there next to us, and we'll see you there.